I'm Carson Horn, and it's time for another edition of Talkin' Toomers, where I break down the latest happenings in Auburn athletics. Let's get rolling. A massive week is upon us on the Plains. It's the Iron Bowl basketball Part 1 week. I cannot wait. It's going to be an exciting weekend. Auburn does not have a midweek game this week in basketball, so all eyes shift now to next Saturday in Auburn's matchup against the Crimson Tide. But we've also got to recap the week that was for Auburn basketball. Auburn went 1-1 this week, splitting the games they had, winning at home against Texas and losing on the road this past Saturday to Tennessee. So we will recap all of that. We will do a detailed preview into the Iron Bowl basketball Part 1. How can Auburn win this game? What are the matchups to key in on and watch? We're going to get into all of it on today's episode. I am Carson Horn. Thank you so much for being tuned in, whether you're listening to the podcast or watching on YouTube. I greatly appreciate it. I would ask, if you haven't already, I'd humbly ask you to please subscribe to the show. Give it a like if you're watching on YouTube. I really appreciate it. Again, thank you so much for the support. It means a ton, and I don't just say that to say that. I truly mean it, so thank you very, very much. But let's get into it now. Let's dive into the week that was for Auburn basketball. Let's start out with the Texas game. This game was on Wednesday night. Auburn played this game at home inside Neville Arena. Auburn won this game 88-82, right around the line for this game. But if you watch it, you know this game was not comfortable for the majority of the game. Auburn was down by as many as 14 points in this game, was down by 14 points late into the second half, and Auburn mounted a comeback to win this game. It was a tremendous offensive effort from Auburn in the second half, scoring on, I believe the stat from Nathan King was 84% of their possessions in the second half, just an astronomical number. Keyshawn Hall was phenomenal, and also, though, this was Auburn sticking to its guns. Stephen Pearl mentioned, and after this game was over in his post-game press conference, that they stuck to their analytics. Texas shot the ball from three very, very well in the first half. And Auburn debated, hey, do we need to adjust something? Do we need to change things up? Texas made 7 threes, 7 for 10 in the first half. And Auburn stuck to their guns, said, you know what? This Texas team does not consistently shoot from three well. We're going to count on the fact that they're not going to do that for the entire 40 minutes of this game. Auburn stuck to their defensive plan. Texas cooled down. And then Auburn ended up winning this matchup in large part due to better defense and also a really big half offensively, especially from Keyshawn Hall. Auburn got to the free throw line at an insanely high clip in the second half. Texas, it felt like, was fouling Auburn on every single possession. They had no answer for them. But yet again, it showed a lot of growth from this team to be able to respond to adversity, to be able to come back from down 14 at home and get a win. Look, we've seen this team battle in a lot of games when they've been down. But to actually come back and get the victory, I think was a big deal and another growth point for this team on Wednesday night. Then they traveled to Knoxville on Saturday for a game against Tennessee. This game I knew was going to be a tough matchup. If you look at historically, Auburn and Tennessee games are always physical. They're usually always low scoring, and they're intense. They're physical matchups. And Tennessee, by and large, has had Auburn's number for the most part. Rick Barnes is a fantastic coach, one of my favorite coaches in all of college basketball. Love Rick Barnes, and he knows how to defend Auburn. He's a Tennessee built on defense. That program's built on defense, and they defended Auburn well in the past, and they continue to do so in this game. And then Auburn just didn't execute well. They, as Stephen Pearl said, got punked, and that was funny enough with the word I used at halftime of this game to describe what I thought I saw in the first half from Auburn. Tennessee beat Auburn at Auburn's game. Tennessee out-rebounded Auburn 46-30, really, and Auburn won the rebounding battle by 1 in the second half, so that shows you how big of a discrepancy it was in the first half of this game. Tennessee was just a more physical team in the paint. Defensively, they forced Auburn to take 31 threes. Now, you could say they didn't force all 31 of those. Auburn chose to take some of those. Auburn did not force the issue and try to get into the paint. So credit to Tennessee. They forced Auburn to play in an uncomfortable way and not play in the way that Auburn is accustomed to playing. And this Auburn basketball team, is not built to shoot 31 threes. This is not a very good three-point shooting team. They can make some, and as we saw against Texas game, Kevin Overton can get hot. Elijah Freeman can knock some down. Keyshawn Hall, though, is really the only one that is a really good three-point shooter. The rest of the guys on this team really aren't. So this is not Auburn's game. To go and shoot 31 threes is not it's not a winning formula. But Tennessee had a lot to do with that, and Auburn did not match their physicality in this game. Auburn also shot 11 less free throws. In pretty much every game this year, Auburn has shot more free throws than their opponent. That's the key for this Auburn basketball team. Get downhill, get to the basket, get fouled, get to the free throw line. And Auburn did not do a very good job of that in this game against Tennessee. And yet Auburn still had a chance to win because defensively, after the start of this game, where Auburn was seemingly out of sorts, allowing wide open threes, it was a really rough start defensively for Auburn. They did settle in on that end, and the first shot defense was pretty good. However, Auburn did not couldn't get enough going offensively, despite the defensive effort that kept them in this game. So I give Auburn credit for battling in a tough environment, but just didn't play well enough to get a win on the road. It was a winnable game, but Auburn did not play well enough to get the win. So it stinks because that would have been another massive resume boost for you and would have kept you in contention in the SEC conference race, but Auburn wasn't able to get the job done. So Auburn is now 5-4 in SEC play after that loss. But one other thing I want to touch on before we move into the Alabama preview is Tahad Pettiford. There's been a lot of conversation around him all season. There was yet a lot of conversation around him again last night after his performance in this Tennessee game. Yeah, Tahad Pettiford's not shooting well. No one's arguing that. I mean, just look at the numbers. He's shooting at a really low clip. And he probably took too many threes last night. Now, some of those were open. And if they're open, he's got to take them. I'm sorry. He's got to take open shots if they're there. I thought a couple times in this Tennessee game, despite Auburn shooting 31 threes, I thought at times Auburn passed up some easier threes to take some tougher ones later in the shot clock. So if there are open shots there, you have to take them and you have to trust Tahad to take them. However, he's not shooting well enough right now. And if he can't get his shot going, it does limit the ceiling of this team. If he can find his shot again, if he can get back going scoring offensively, then it does elevate the ceiling of this team. But where he's at right now, he's just not shooting well. And I said this last week, or 2 weeks ago, I believe, on this very show, that the way I'm viewing Tahad right now, and maybe it's fair or not, I'm just viewing him in a little bit different lens than most people. I'm not counting on him to provide a ton of scoring offensively. What I'm focusing on is he playing pretty good defense, which he has been? Is he running the offense well, which he has been for the most part? Meaning getting Auburn's offense in the right looks, in the right sets, making the right passes, not turning the basketball over. And overall, he's done that. So that's what I'm focusing on. He can control those things, and he's doing a good job with those. So I think that while the criticism is warranted for the poor shooting and frustration is warranted from the Auburn fan base because of that, I think you have to view it through a little bit different lens and, again, still realize, hey, maybe he's just not going to shoot it well this year. Maybe it's just a slump, and you can hope that he breaks out of it. And certainly if he does, that'll be a massive boost for Auburn. But I'm not counting on it at this point. What I'm looking at is, can he run the offense well? Can he play good defense? Don't turn the basketball over, and give Auburn a chance to win games and be successful. And he has done that for the most part. But at the same time, yeah, it would be nice if Auburn were to get more offense out of him, and I'm going to talk about that in my Alabama preview, because I think for Auburn to win some of these games down the stretch against higher-level opponents, he's going to need to shoot the ball at a higher clip. And if he does that, Auburn has a chance to really, really be special and make a run into this back half of the season. But right now, I am not counting on that from Tahad Pettiford. So I get the frustration for Auburn fans. I do. I understand it. But again, I would focus on the positives. And again, I have usually a more positive outlook. I get used to that. I understand. But that's just my viewpoint. You don't have to agree with it. You can disagree, sure. If you want to focus on the poor shooting, that's your prerogative. That's how I'm viewing the Tahad Pettiford situation at this moment. Okay, let's get into it. The Iron Bowl basketball Part 1 preview. Man, I cannot wait for this matchup on Saturday. This rivalry has turned into one of the best ones in college basketball. I'm still amazed by what this rivalry has turned into, and it's a credit to both programs, to Nate Oates, to Bruce Pearl, and now on to Stephen Pearl, and to what these guys have done at the respective programs to turn these two teams into two of the best teams and best programs in the SEC. This year's game isn't going to have the same amount of fanfare as it did last year in the first matchup, where you had number 1 Auburn versus number 2 Alabama. That likely won't ever happen again. That was a lot of fun. That was a super fun game. But these games usually always live up to the hype. They usually always deliver super high intensity. And man, I'm looking forward to this matchup, both of these matchups, again this season. Last year, just to give you a little bit of recap, I already mentioned it, but of course you had the 1 versus 2 matchup in Tuscaloosa. Auburn won the game in Tuscaloosa, and Alabama won the game in Auburn to close out the regular season last year. So the road team won each of the matchups last season. Will that trend continue this year? We shall see. Of course, this is Stephen Pearl's first Iron Bowl basketball as the head coach. So this will be his first matchup as head coach against Nate Oates. That's, of course, another storyline to follow. But let's get into this game now. Let's look at what's going to be the key here. What are the storylines to follow? We know, as always, Alabama is an excellent offensive team. That's no different this year. They can really score the basketball. They're tough to stop. And I do believe their defense is better than it has been the last couple of years. Of course, it got a major boost defensively with Charles Bediako being re-entered into that lineup. There's been a lot said about Charles Bediako. I am tired of talking about it. I am tired of hearing about it, as I'm sure many of you are. I've said my piece on it. I'm done talking about it as much as I can. I'm going to try not to spend too much more time on it. If you didn't know, he will be back in court on Friday. Before the Iron Bowl this Saturday, he will be back in court on Friday. And there will be a ruling on whether or not he can play the rest of the season or not. For this preview's sake, I am going to assume that he is going to play in this game against Auburn and for the rest of the season. If you're listening to this on Friday after the court ruling, or if you're listening to this on Saturday before the game, just know that this was recorded well in advance of that. So I'm going off the assumption that Charles Bediako will play in this game. And I think if you're Auburn, of course, you have to prepare like he's going to play this game, because you're not going to know until right before the game on Saturday. Okay, so what matchups will determine this game? So there's a couple different matchups I've got my eye on that I think can ultimately dictate the outcome here of the Iron Bowl of basketball. First off, Auburn's 3-point defense versus Alabama's 3-point offense, of course. Auburn is number 241st in the opponent 3-point shooting percentage. Auburn is very, very poor defending the 3 this year. Now, some of that you can say there should be some adjustment to the mean here, regression to the mean, but it hasn't happened so far. And we saw even against the Tennessee game, against the Tennessee team that doesn't shoot the 3 well, shot it pretty well against Auburn. Texas, ditto. So this is a dangerous point for Auburn. If Auburn does not defend the 3 well here, Alabama, we know, can shoot it really well. They average 12 threes per game. That is good for second in the country. They can really shoot it. If Alabama gets hot from 3 and it's hitting 12 to 15 threes in this game, it's probably not good for Auburn and Auburn's chances to win this matchup. But a bigger thing that I'm watching for, part of what opens up those threes, is if Alabama's able to get the drive and dish, they're able to cause a help defender to have to come over, and then you get an open 3. So Auburn has to stay in front of their man. Stephen Pearl says it like this: Auburn players have to guard their yard, is how he puts it. Auburn has to win their one-on-one matchups. Tahad Pettiford, Kevin Overton, Elijah Freeman, SWA when he gets switched onto a guard, Keyshawn Murphy when he gets switched onto a guard. Those guys have to stay in front of their man, or else things can get really dangerous really quickly for this Alabama offense. It's easier said than done. This Alabama offense, of course, is really, really good. Auburn has to be able to win their fair share of one-on-one matchups in order to win this game. I have all the confidence in the world in a guy like SWA defensively. Auburn's going to need effort like he can give from all 5 guys on the court in this game. Is going to take a special effort. I think about last year. I mean, just to show you how hard it is to stop this Alabama team. I think about last year and the defenders that Auburn had on that team, including Denver Jones, and still how difficult it was to stay in front of and stop this Alabama offense. And Auburn also had great rim protection last year with Janai Broome and Dylan Cardwell, and yet Auburn still struggled to slow down this Alabama offense. Auburn does not have the same caliber defensive players this season, so it makes it even more of a challenge. Stephen Pearl and this staff will have to have a really good game plan. We'll probably have to mix things up defensively to put this Auburn team in the best situation to win this basketball game on Saturday. Another matchup I'm looking for, if you want to call it that, but this is just another key thing I'm circling. Free throws in this game are going to be crucial. Auburn is number 3 in the country in free throws attempted a game. If Auburn wants to win this game, Auburn needs to get to the free throw line at a high clip. Alabama fouls a lot. Alabama is number 339 in opponents' free throws allowed per game. They foul at a high clip. If Auburn can get to the free throw line and shoot 20 to 30 free throws in this game and make the majority of those, Auburn will probably have a pretty good shot at staying in this game and winning this game. But Auburn has to be able to get downhill and get to the free throw line. That's going to be, I think, a massive thing to look at. If you're looking at this game at the end and you're looking at Auburn with 30 free throws compared to Alabama's like 17 or 18 or something like that, that's probably a good sign that Auburn has a chance to win this game. Because Alabama also gets to the free throw line at a pretty high clip as well. I believe they're around 30th in the country in free throws attempted per game. So both teams can get to the line, but I think it's even more important for Auburn to be able to do so. And then finally, rebounding. Auburn's a good offensive rebounding team. Alabama is an excellent defensive rebounding team. So strength on strength, Alabama's number 6 in the country in defensive rebounding. Auburn is number 26 in the country in offensive rebounding. Can Auburn get offensive rebounds and get second chance points against this Alabama team? I think that'll go a long way also determining the outcome. So those aren't the only matchups, of course, but those are 3 that I'm circling that could end up determining this game for Auburn. If Auburn wants to win this game, winning those 3 matchups could go a long way. So what's Auburn's path to winning this game now that we looked at the matchups? I think you got to make it ugly if you're Auburn. I think you got to make this an ugly game. What do I mean by that? I mean, you got to slow down the pace. You cannot play at Alabama's pace. You have to dictate the pace to Alabama. That doesn't mean that when you get a chance to score in transition, you don't take advantage of that. Absolutely you do. This Auburn team's pretty good in transition offense. So if you get that opportunity, you go. But overall, you want to play at a slower pace. In the half court, you want to get downhill and you want to get to the basket. Is that going to be a challenge with Alabama's front court, assuming Charles Bediako plays in this game? Yes, I am concerned about Alabama's size and how Auburn's going to be able to attack and get downhill, especially if you've got the lineup of Aiden Sherrill and Charles Bediako out there. That's a physical lineup for Alabama that can make things difficult for Auburn. But Auburn can't shy away. Auburn still has to be aggressive and get downhill and cannot shy away, even if Bama has good size in there. Because that's Auburn's game. You can't let Alabama dictate the terms of the game to you. Auburn made that mistake in the Tennessee game, letting Tennessee dictate things to them. Auburn cannot do that in this matchup. Have to make it ugly, get to the free throw line, slow the pace of this game down, and then win the rebounding battle. I just mentioned that. That's going to be massive. Can't let Alabama get second chance points, and then also get offensive rebounds. Philip Jovich, Sebastian Williams-Adams, Keyshawn Murphy, going to be massive at getting rebounds in this game and playing physical, especially if you're undersized with a guy like Bediako and Sherrill in there. Philip Jovich and SWA have to be physical in this matchup. And then defensively, make Alabama take tough twos. Don't give them open threes. If they beat you with tough twos, they beat you with tough twos. As long as twos count less than threes, that's the strategy I would take. You don't have the rim protection like you had last year, but I'd still rather force Alabama to get downhill and deal with the twos than to let them sit back and hit open threes all game. I think that's going to be important if Auburn wants to win this matchup. With Charles Bediako playing, I think this makes it much tougher for Auburn. I know what Florida did to Alabama. Auburn does not have the same caliber and same size and physicality that Florida had. Florida dominated Alabama in the paints on the offensive end, despite Charles Bediako playing in that game. But Auburn doesn't have a Ruben Chinyelu. Auburn doesn't have an Alex Condon. SWA, Philip Jovich, and Keyshawn Murphy need to be really good for Auburn in this game, but they're not those players. But Auburn still has to try to be physical down low and still has to take the game to Alabama in the paint. I do not think Auburn can just sit back and take threes. Another thing I'm looking for, though, offensively, the mid-range twos. So Alabama plays drop coverage defensively, which means they're going to give you some open mid-range shots. Two guys on this Auburn team that could be X factors in this game. This goes back to my earlier point on Tahad Pettiford. Tahad Pettiford and Elijah Freeman could be X factors offensively for Auburn in this game. Why? Because of the mid-range twos. Both of those guys have pretty good jumpers, and they shoot it at a pretty high clip. Tahad shoots his mid-range jumper pretty well. He has a pretty good floater. Elijah Freeman shoots his mid-range jumper as well. Alabama's going to give Auburn those looks. If Tahad and Freeman can shoot those really well, and they have big games offensively that can take a little bit of pressure off of Keyshawn Hall, who I'm sure is going to be a big focal point of Alabama's game plan, and it's going to give Auburn, I think, a really good shot to be successful offensively because of the size that you have down there with Bediako and Sherrill. So if I'm looking at this game, I think that the X factors and a key for Auburn winning this game could very well be to Todd Pettiford or Elijah Freeman in this game offensively. If they have big games because of the way Alabama defends, those are two guys I'm circling. And mid-range game, not talked about a ton anymore in college basketball, but I think it's something that Auburn, with the guys, the roster they have, and some of the disadvantages they have because of Alabama's size, something that Auburn could look at in the game plan this week and try to get some good looks for Freeman and Tahad in the mid-range and see if you can get some easy buckets that way. So suffice to say, I think this is a tougher matchup for Auburn with Charles Bediako than it was with Aiden Trill. I felt pretty good about the matchup at home anyways if Bediako was not playing, because I thought Auburn might have an advantage physically, even if Bama still had a little bit of size advantage. I do think Charles Bediako changes things. I think it makes Alabama a lot better defensively. But it doesn't mean this isn't a winnable game for Auburn. It doesn't mean Auburn can't compete here and still find a way to win at home. The ESPN analytics at the time I'm recording this gave Auburn about a 57% chance to win this game. I don't know the line yet on this game as I'm recording this. So I think Auburn finds a way at home to win this game, but it's going to take a special effort. Auburn's going to have to play one of its best games of the season. If Auburn does that, though, they can win this basketball game. It's going to be a raucous environment in Neville Arena. I cannot wait to see this game. Like I said at the get-go, these games always deliver. They're always a lot of fun. And I can't wait to watch it all play out on Saturday. Again, this is part 1. Auburn will close the season in Tuscaloosa for the Iron Bowl of Basketball part 2. Thank you all for listening to today's episode of Talkin' Toomers. I know it was a little bit shorter. Decided just to do basketball and just do the preview of the Iron Bowl of Basketball on today's episode. Not getting into any football. I promise you we'll have more to discuss on football in the coming weeks. As recruiting is rocking and rolling, as the roster is pretty much set, Alex Golish and the staff have not slept. They're continuing to work hard to recruit for the future and also get ready for this upcoming season. So we'll have more on football in the coming weeks, but just wanted to stick to basketball on this week's episode. But thank you all so much again for watching or listening, and we'll be back with another episode next week. Thank you for listening to Talkin' Toomers. If you liked what you heard, make sure to subscribe and follow @Talkin' Toomers on social media so you'll never miss an episode. War Eagle.